All right. Show of hands. Show of hands. Be honest now. Be honest. We're starting a live stream. Nobody can see you. I can't see you. It's just you and yourself. You're going to be completely honest with yourself right now, okay? Everybody in a moment of truth. Show of hands. Who had Pitt winning this game tonight? I know one James Hammett had them going and getting the win at Virginia. Jim picked Pitt to win in our staff picks article. Nobody else did. Not Matt Steinbrink, not Houston Wilson, not Steven Gertz. Not me. Show of hands, I didn't have Pitt winning tonight. Did you? And I definitely didn't have Pitt winning in the way that they did. We got a lot of time here tonight to talk about this game on the Panther-Lair Post-Game, and I think there's a lot of things we're going to say about it, a lot of ways to talk about it. But the thing I'm going to keep coming back to over and over and over again is how Pitt played in this game, how they won this game, the things they did to win this game. I mean, obviously that's what you talk about on a post-game show, but I can't get past the feeling that this felt like a postseason game. This felt like an ACC tournament game. This felt like an NCAA tournament, more an ACC tournament game because there's a level of familiarity. But two teams who battled really, really hard. Two teams who went really, really hard at each other throughout the game. And there were some runs, but not many. I mean, probably the biggest run. I mean, obviously Pitt ultimately put together the biggest run to go ahead by 10 and then 12 and then 14. But Virginia had like a 9-0 run early in the second half that was one of the biggest runs of the game. Really. I mean, I think when you look at how Pitt built its lead, they're at 50-49. They get a basket to 52-49. It went back and forth, but they just kept staying ahead of Virginia, trading 3 for 2 a lot of times. And they ultimately pulled away. But the way how Pitt was able to go to Virginia, arguably the toughest place in college basketball to play this season. Winners of how many? 23 in a row at home. And not only put in a valiant effort, but be up to the task, to battle, to go toe-to-toe with one of the hottest teams. I mean, with what was prior to today the hottest team in the ACC. And then ultimately not just be in that battle, but pull away for a comfortable win, a double-digit win over a ranked team in a quad one game on the road, snapping the nation's longest winning streak. Folks, that's a hell of a win. And it was a great basketball game. It was a great college basketball game. I thought it was really enjoyable to watch. It's the kind of game that I think casual basketball fans should enjoy watching because two teams really going back and forth, playing at a pretty high level. Just one team doing things a little bit better than the other. And in some cases, a lot better than the other. And that team that did things better than the other, that was Pitt. And the Panthers come out with a 74-63 win. They improved to 16-8 overall on the season. They're 7-6 in the ACC. They've now won 6 out of their last 7 games, 4 in a row right now. And I would say, and I don't think you would disagree, they're the hottest team in the ACC right now. It was Virginia, but now it's Pitt. I would say it's Pitt. And I think this team is playing more and more like the kind of team that is looking less and less appealing as an opponent when you look down your schedule. What a win. And what a series of performances. It was unbelievable to see how this team, I mean, Blake Hinson stands out, obviously, because Blake Hinson scored 29 points. He had a 27 points. Just shy of his career high 29 that he set at West Virginia earlier this year. But Jalen Lowe scored 12. Ishmael Leggett had 13. Bub Carrington scored 9. Guillermo Diaz-Graham scored 8. I think 7 of the 8 players who took the court for Pitt tonight scored. Anybody who played more than 3 minutes scored in this game. And 6 out of the 8 guys who played, 6 out of the 7 who played more than 3 minutes hit a three-pointer, at least one, and most of them made multiple three-pointers. And it's funny because you look, Pitt shot 44% from 3. They were 14 of 32. Blake Hinson was 5 of 13, but everybody else was a pretty good shooting percentage. Bub Carrington, 2 of 6 from 3. Not great, but Jalen Lowe, 2 of 3. Zach Austin was 1 of 2. Ish Leggett was 2 of 5. Guillermo Diaz-Graham was 2 of 3. There was a lot going really, really well. Bub Carrington behind Hinson, Lowe, and Leggett in the scoring with 9 points, but he puts up 8 rebounds and 6 assists. Ishmael Leggett had 8 rebounds in this game as well. They finished with 14 assists on 26 field goals. They only turned the ball over 8 times. They only commit 11 fouls. They win the rebounding battle 35-25, and this is something we're going to talk about a lot. I think it was huge in this game. They win the rebounding battle by 10 at the end of the game, 35-25. Pitt was losing the rebounding battle at halftime by 1, but they were losing 15-14. Pitt out-rebounded Virginia 21-10 in the second half. Didn't give up a single didn't give up a single offensive rebound. Blake Hinson had 3 defensive rebounds. Bub Carrington had 4. Ishmael Leggett had 4. And Jalen Lowe had 1. 13 defensive rebounds spread over 4 players, none of them being the centers, Federico or Guillermo Diaz-Graham on the defensive end, and eliminating second chance opportunities for Virginia. Virginia didn't get a single offensive rebound. Meanwhile, Pitt grabbed 8 offensive rebounds and had 10 second chance points. They controlled the second half. 4-point lead at halftime turns into an 11-point lead. At one point, a 14-point lead for Pitt. They control, and I shouldn't say they controlled the second half because Virginia went on a run. Virginia went on a 9-0 run to take a 2-point lead, and Pitt called a timeout. And right out of the timeout, Blake Hinson kind of forced his way through a double team to score a basket to tie it up. And the game went back and forth. There was ultimately a point when Pitt sort of took the lead for good, where you felt like they had taken the lead for good. Probably, probably when it was for me was, I think Ishmael Leggett got a turnover, took off on a fast break, missed the layup, but Blake Hinson was right there for the putback to put it in. Now it made the 12-point game with 4:49 left to go. That might have been the moment that sealed it for me. Or maybe at the 6:29 mark when Blake Hinson hit a 3 that made it a 10-point game. Tony Bennett had to take a timeout in that situation. There were a lot of spots where Pitt took control of this game, and they end up with a huge win. I think there's a lot to say about this. I think you guys probably have a lot to say. We're going to get into this, as many of your comments and questions as we possibly can. Now, obviously, there's a lot of comments and questions in the chat screen here. If you want to make sure we read your comment or read your question, you can be a super chatter. You click the little $sign down at the bottom just to give a couple bucks to the podcast. Appreciate your support, and we will make sure we read what your comment and your question is. Michael B started it off as a super chatter, says, "Oh my, Chris, Pitt just dominated Virginia in all facets of the game. Pitt is on fire, so I got to ask again now, is Pitt now in contention to make the NCAA tournament? They have to be, right? I'm so happy." I bet you are, Michael B, and I appreciate, you're one of the most emotional Pitt fans that I know of. And I mean, fans in general are emotional. You swing wild. You know what I mean? When it's going bad, you swing really bad. When it's going good, you swing really good. And this is certainly a night to swing on the really good side. Look, they're giving themselves a chance. Every time they win a game, they're giving themselves a chance to stay in that conversation. I don't know if they're going to be on Joe Lunardi's bubble tomorrow morning. We'll see what happens to their net ranking. It's got to jump after getting a quad 1 win on the road. They're going to climb, but the thing is, it's all going to keep building. You know what I mean? Like they're nowhere close to putting themselves. I shouldn't say nowhere close. It sounds extreme, but they haven't made themselves a lock by any stretch of the imagination. But they've got those opportunities out there to lock themselves in. You know what I mean? They've got those opportunities are on the schedule. So they go to Virginia, they get a win. You can't blow it against Louisville on Saturday, but then you're going to get another opportunity next Tuesday night at Wake Forest. Another huge game for this team. And then, the Tuesday after that, they go to Clemson, another huge game. And in between those, you've got games that the way you're playing right now, Louisville at home, Virginia Tech at home, Boston College on the road, Florida State at home, you should win those games. And I mean, some of them, Louisville, Boston College, Florida State, are probably must-wins. You can't afford to lose those. If you take one loss down the stretch here, and you'd rather it not be a home game, so maybe you beat Wake Forest and lose to Clemson or vice versa. and you end up going 7-1 over these final 8 games, this stretch run that started tonight with the win, then I think you've put yourself in great position to get into the NCAA tournament. This is a huge resume building win, just like the Duke win was, and now there's 2. I mean, now you've got 2 resume building wins, maybe the 2 biggest resume building wins that you could possibly have this season, Duke and Virginia on the road. Miami was an opportunity, but you missed that one. Took care of business against Wake Forest at home. Beat NC State on the road. That's good. You want to, and I talked about this on the morning pit this morning, you want NC State to keep winning. NC State's like just outside that top 75 in the net rankings. You want them to keep winning so they can crawl back into the top 75. Once they get there, your win in Raleigh, Pitt's win in Raleigh, becomes a quad 1 win. So you want NC State to keep winning, and then obviously you need Pitt to keep winning. If they play like they played tonight, and it's not just the scoring. I mean, obviously they were, it's a great job. They scored 74 points at Virginia. That's no easy task. They shot 45% from the field. They shot 44% from 3. That's, that's a big part of it. If they don't shoot well, they're not going to win most games. But they didn't just shoot well tonight. They also defended really well. Virginia shot 50% from the field. That's fine. I mean, it's not fine. You don't want to give up 50% from the field. They were under 30% from 3. And Virginia only turned the ball over 5 times. So, I mean, you look at those stats, you'd be like, well, they didn't really defend that well. They did. I think as you watched it, I think they made life very difficult for Virginia. Virginia got a lot of their baskets with Royce Beekman just driving. You know what I mean? They gave up some open shots early and gave up some points that way. But for the most part, I thought they defended Virginia really, really well. And then the defensive rebounds were huge, particularly in the second half. The way they attacked the defensive glass was giant in keeping Virginia from stringing together baskets to make a run. They kept this game in reach by not really allowing Virginia to make a run outside of that 9-0 run that they had early in the second half. That was really the only time. I mean, I could look through the notes here and see if Virginia made 3 baskets in a row. No, they had a spot there where they made 3. They scored 3 times in a row, but one of those was free throws. Outside of that 9-0 run, I don't think Virginia made 3 baskets in a row at all during the game. And actually, after that 9-0 run in the first half, when the game went from 38-31 Pitt lead to a 40-38 Virginia lead, outside of that, Virginia didn't make consecutive baskets again in the game. Pitt always had an answer. I'm just glancing through and make sure I'm not misreading some free throws or something like that. No. So in the final 16 and a half minutes, Pitt had an answer every single time for Virginia. In the final 16 and a half minutes of this game, after Virginia made 4 baskets in a row to turn a 7-point Pitt lead into a 2-point Virginia lead. After that, Pitt regrouped, and for the final 16-29, they didn't allow Virginia to make consecutive baskets. That's how you win a game. That's how you win a game, and Pitt did a great job of it. And so much of it was the rebounding. And you see from the final rebounding numbers, it wasn't Federico and Guillermo Diaz-Graham. And I'll say, I think both of those guys played well. I mean, Guillermo was obviously scoring 3 of 5 from the floor, 2 of 3 from 3. He had 4 rebounds. I think 1 offensive rebound, 3 defensive rebounds. Federico ended up with 3 rebounds, 1 on the offensive side, 2 on the defensive side, but I thought he had a couple big rebounds in the first half that were huge in terms of defensive boards that were huge for limiting Virginia and keeping them from going on a run. And then he had 2 blocks that I think both were in the first half. Yeah, both blocks were in the first half. Again, huge. Because in that first half, it felt like every possession was just life or death. You know what I mean? It really did, where you were holding your breath for the entire possession. And if it was a Virginia possession and Pitt came down with a defensive rebound, you exhaled. You said, all right, they got out of that one. And if it was at the other end, you're holding the breath until you see, if they score or what happens there. And then, okay, got out of that one. And then you go back to the other end, and you felt like Virginia had sort of that same approach of holding, maybe not the players because they got to run a lot, but coaches, fans, people watching, holding their breath on every possession to to see how this game was going to go. I was just glancing down at the plus-minus numbers here. Zach Austin, a -15 in this game. Ouch. Federico, a -4. Will Jeffers, a -1, but he only played like 3 minutes. Ishmael Leggett played 29 minutes and was +24. Zach Austin played 18 minutes. I felt like he was out there a lot. Not so much in the second half. They really stuck with Leggett for the most part in the second half. But I guess Austin got some extra minutes. I felt like Austin got extra minutes in the first half. Let me just see what he played 11 minutes. Leggett played 14 in the first half. But in the second half, I felt like there was more Austin because Carrington was in foul trouble or had to sit or sat for a little while with having 3 fouls. So are they in NCAA tournament convention or conversation and contention? Yeah, they're in that conversation, but they've got to keep doing what they're doing. You know, they haven't arrived yet. They dug themselves a hole, but they're climbing out of it. And as they continue to play these games and win these games, they're going to continue digging themselves out of it. And the great thing is that schedule will give them opportunities to not just opportunities to build a resume, but opportunities to stack wins, which is part of what they need right now. You know, they need to get 21, 22, 23 wins in the regular season. 23 would be really remarkable. But they need to stack wins and then head into the ACC tournament and probably win another 1 or 2. But big resume win for sure tonight. Alan McMurray says, how clutch is Jalen Lowe? He was so cool and collected down the stretch. I give a big shout out to both freshman guards. I really do. I put this on Twitter at one point. One of the media timeouts, I said a few thoughts. And one of the thoughts was that Carrington and Lowe just needed to slow down. And this was after this might have been, this was probably the under 12 timeout. Virginia called a timeout because Pitt was up 22-18. And this was after I had the thought, and I waited until the media timeout to tweet it, but I had the thought, and then after the thought came to my mind, Bub Carrington made 1 3 and then a 3 and 1 in transition that he converted. So I was like, well, this is going to ring a little bit hollow after how he's played. But I thought both guards started off going really fast. I mean, really fast. And I'm not talking about getting out and running in transition. I'm talking about in the half court when they needed to be sort of methodical, cool, collected, keep their heads about them. The way they've done all season, I felt like they were sped up, and not necessarily from Virginia's defense. I felt like they were being sped up by the moment. I felt like they were juiced, and they were going fast, and they weren't sort of playing, like Vin Diesel says, right? Don't lose that meal ticket, or don't. I messed up the quote. Don't lose that cool of yours, bub. Don't lose that cool of yours, Jalen. That's your meal ticket, right? And it's been their meal ticket. The moment hasn't been too big for them. They've been able to rise to the occasion. And tonight, I thought early on, the moment felt a little too big, that they were rushing it a little bit. They were pushing themselves to go faster than maybe they were comfortable going, and maybe faster than they needed to go. But then they settled in, calmed down, and played well, and made big shots, and made good plays, and made good passes. And Jalen Lowe, absolutely. I thought in the second half was outstanding. I agree. Had 9 points, 4 of 5 shooting. He made his only three-point attempt. He had 2 rebounds. He didn't turn the ball over. He played all 20 minutes. Hinson played all 20 minutes in the second half. Carrington played 18 minutes. Sat out a couple minutes with the fouls. Carrington only made 1 basket in the second half. He was 1 of 3 from the floor. When was his basket? He had a drive to make it a 14-point game with 3 minutes left to go. He drove and scored. That was his only make in the second half. He only attempted 1 3, so he wasn't forcing shots, but he had 4 rebounds, all on defense, and he had 4 assists and 1 turnover. So I'll take that from Bub Carrington. I'd rather that he scores. You'd like him to get more than 2 points, but Carrington had 2 points in the second half, but he only took 3 attempts and only 1 3-point attempt. And I think that's important to point out. He wasn't forcing it. He wasn't hunting for shots. He was passing the ball. He had 4 assists, like I said. What is that for his? He had 6 in the game, 4 of them in the second half, and he was rebounding. You know what I mean? He was finding other ways to help them win in addition to defending really well. So I thought Bub Carrington played a great game too. But Jalen Lowe, he was huge in the second half. Ishmael Leggett was huge. What did he have in the second half? He had 8 points, only 1 of 9 from the floor. So not great for Ishmael Leggett, but Ishmael Leggett had 8 rebounds in the second half. 4 on offense, 4 on defense. Maybe that's why I felt like he had a great second half, because even though he only made 1 basket and it was a 3, it was a big 3 because it tied the game at 43-43. He also had his hand on the ball a lot with 8 rebounds. He committed 2 fouls, but he also got a steal. A game like this, it's funny because like we could just go like player by player and be like, well, this guy just played really well. This guy had so much to do with it, because this was like a team win. I mean, like, you run down the list here: Hinson, Carrington, Lowe, Leggett, Guillermo, Federico, Austin Jeffers. I mean, like, Will Jeffers didn't play in the second half. Played 3 minutes in the game. Maybe he didn't have a ton to do. He 1 foul, didn't get any rebounds, didn't score or anything like that. So maybe he didn't have a lot to do with the win. Zach Austin made a 3 early, which was big. I think just to keep Pitt's confidence up. But otherwise, he didn't do anything. He didn't have any rebounds. He played 18 minutes. I guess he played some solid defense. But, I mean, I think Federico had a big game, had a good game, made some solid contributions, particularly in the first half. I thought Guillermo had a good game. And then Hinson, Carrington, Lowe, Leggett, the 4 big guys, the guys who need to produce every game, the guys who need to be your main guys every night out, they came up big. They came up big. They did what you need them to do, and they came up with big plays down the stretch, and it was all them. You know what I mean? It was all them in the final 10 minutes of this game. They played great. They really did. Let's see. And Jalen Lowe, yeah, to your point, Alan, Jalen Lowe was pretty outstanding. Bill Florigen says, great win. Take care of business 1 game at a time. Yeah, that's what it'll come down to. And they'll have those opportunities. Like I say, I mean, so, you just got, I mean, they've won 4 in a row. They've won 6 out of their last 7. They're feeling really good about themselves playing against Virginia. Now on Saturday night, you need to go crush Louisville. Don't overlook this team. Don't get too high on yourself. Go crush them. Remember all the things you had to do to beat Virginia. Remember all the things you had to do to beat NC State, and the things you had to do to beat Duke, and the things you had to do to beat Wake Forest and Notre Dame, quite frankly. Keep talking about this. Jeff Capel keeps talking about this. What's required to win? They're figuring out what's required to win, what they have to do to win games. And I think in this game, you saw some of that. You saw how they played on defense. You saw how they attacked the glass and went after rebounds. There were points where you could say, and I hate this kind of sports cliche, but there were points where you would look at it and you'd say, Pitt just wants this more than Virginia. They're trying harder right now. They are going after loose balls and rebounds harder than Virginia is. And not the whole game, because I don't want to say that Virginia didn't put in a lot of effort. Those guys played really hard in this game, as you would expect Virginia to do. But there were a number of points where you say Pitt wanted it more. They simply wanted it more, and they got it. And they got a win because of it. They need to remember that and do those things when they play Louisville on Saturday. Like, that's the next game. That's the most important game. You can't blow that. You've got to be on top of that one. Michael Headley says, Michael, the screen jump. There it is. Michael Headley says, the guards have been awesome, and this team is coming together at the right time. Got to keep the momentum going, but can run the table if they play like this. So I'm not going to go all the way to run the table, Michael. Certainly if they play like this. Look, if they have the energy and they're on top of it like they were tonight, and they're shooting well and they're rebounding and defending like they did tonight, yeah, absolutely. They can win every game. They can run the table. There's no question about it. There's going to be a hiccup in there, right? There's going to be a night where the shots don't fall. There's going to be a night where they just don't defend well enough. It's hard to go like that for 30 games. It's hard to go like that for 10 games, 8 games in a row. But I will absolutely agree with you that they are peaking at the right time. They are coming together at the right time. They are, it's what you want. You know what I mean? It's what you need from Pitt as you head toward the end of the season. As you're in mid-February, you want to be playing the way Pitt is playing right now. I guess that's probably the best way to say it. The best way I could come up with to say it. I should probably write it down because I'll write it in the 3-2-1 column on Friday. But this is exactly where you want to be in mid-February. I am writing this down. You're going to see it in the 3-2-1 column on Friday. Exactly where you want to be in mid-Feb. It's how you want to be playing, right? You want your scorers to be scoring. I wrote it down. It's very sloppy. You can't read it, but I wrote it down. You want your scorers to be scoring. You want your team to be playing with good energy and showing that they understand the things that they're going to have to do in order to win games, because they're going to have a lot of games coming up that they need to win. And you want your young guys to really be coming into their own, particularly if you're a team like Pitt that's relying on those young guys. And right now, I mean, they've been relying on those young guys for a long time, and those guys are absolutely coming into their own, and they just keep getting better. And they're now experiencing some of the biggest challenges that this conference has to present. You know, they've gone to Duke and won. They've gone to Virginia and won. They're going to have to go to Wake Forest. They're going to have to go to NC State. They're going to have to go to Boston College, but in terms of the biggest challenges in the conference, that Wake Forest game is going to be huge. That NC State game, or NC State's up here, excuse me. They've already gone to NC State and won. That Wake Forest game is going to be huge, as well as these home games. This team seems to thrive on the road, and maybe that'll benefit them from when they get to the ACC tournament, but they got to win at home too and take care of that business. But they are. They're coming into their own. The guards are developing and growing the way you would like them to. Tony Sadaka says, what will Pitt have to do to be in the NCAA tournament? Yeah, that's the $1 million question, Tony. So they're sitting at 16-8 right now overall. 7 games left to play in the regular season. Take another one of those road games. Oh, Clemson's the other road game. I knew there was another road game. I wasn't remembering when I was talking about the challenges that these guys are going to face. Win at Wake next Tuesday and or Clemson at Clemson the next Tuesday. Don't blow it against Louisville. Don't blow it against Boston College or Florida State. And, win at least one of Virginia Tech and NC State. I know you don't want to lose home games, but I think you can benefit. I tend to think, and maybe people who follow this more closely or have a better understanding of the algorithm or science or whatever could say this. I tend to think that a win at Wake or a win at Clemson would help you more than a loss to Virginia Tech at home or a loss to NC State at home would hurt you. Like, if you're only going to have one loss out of these final 7, which seems like a possibility because I thought they might have 2 losses out of the final 8, one of those being this game tonight. If you're going to have one loss out of the final 7, I think you can help yourself more by winning at Wake or winning at Clemson. But then again, a loss at Clemson isn't going to doom you. Certainly the way a loss to Louisville at home would doom you. To your question, what does Pitt need to do to get in the NCAA tournament? We talked a lot this morning on the Morning Pitt about going 6-2 in the final 8 and then needing to win a couple of games in the ACC tournament. That's probably still it. I mean, so you're looking at maybe 8 more wins, coming into today. Obviously, they got 1 today, which means 7 more wins, which means they would get up to 23 wins on the season. It would be 23-10 by the time after they bow out of the ACC tournament. So that should probably be your target. Final 7 games here, go 6-1. You should and then win an ACC tournament game. Then you'd be at 23, right? Is my math? Am I screwing up my math here? They're 16-8 now. They go 6-1. They'll be 22-9. They win 1 and lose 1 in the ACC tournament. They'll be 23-10. They should get in at 23-10, particularly with wins at Virginia, at Duke. And if they only would lose 1 the rest of the way, they're going to have a win at Wake or at Clemson. assuming that the other loss or that loss is from one of those road games. So it's a foggy picture. You know what I mean? It's hard to sit here and say exactly. I mean, obviously, if they win the ACC tournament, then they're a lock to get in. That's the only thing that's a guarantee. Otherwise, it really is sort of one game at a time. Like, okay, you just got a huge win. Now you need to not blow it and take care of business against Louisville at home. Grant Sakuda says, what does Syracuse's win versus North Carolina do to Pitt's tournament chances, and what bourbon are you shooting tonight? I skipped the I skipped the bourbon on school nights, to be honest with you. It's not I'm too old, man. If this game was on a Saturday, we would definitely have it. As far as Syracuse winning at North Carolina tonight, the Orange were number 91 in the net ranking coming into today. I think, was that game at North Carolina? I don't know. It was at Syracuse. That'll help their ranking. They're 91. If they could climb into the top 75, that would make Pitt's loss at the Dome a quad 1 loss. So that's, that helps, I guess. It removes a quad 2 loss. I'm not as interested or concerned about Syracuse in their fate. I don't think they're not really in a position where I think they can help or hurt Pitt all that much. I'm mostly interested in the games that Pitt has won, getting those games to look even better on the resume. So you're rooting for NC State. You're rooting for Wake Forest. Now you're rooting for Virginia. Although I don't see Virginia dropping too far from this loss, although it's going to hurt them. But you're rooting for NC State and Wake Forest. You're rooting for Virginia and Duke. I mean, obviously, you want those teams to keep winning because the better they look, the better you look for going to their house and beating them. But NC State and Wake Forest are probably the two you want to see make the biggest jump. NC State, you want them to jump back into the top 75 of the net rankings so that you can get that pretty quad 1 win in Raleigh. Willat Harris is a super chatter, says Chris, very nice collared shirt. Man, it's just flannel. I stay head to toe in Eddie Bauer. It's kind of how we do it around here. Nothing too fancy. Just a little flannel. But I appreciate that you appreciate it. It's been cold. It was cold today. Had to wear something a little bit warmer. All right, that's all the super chatters. If you want to make sure your comment or question can jump in, you can be a super chatter as well. Let's start jumping through here and see what people have been saying. Otherwise, you guys are not super chatters. Let's see. Scott Eisenberg says, well, that sure will help the tournament chances. You're absolutely right. Scott Mitchell says, no complaints allowed. Double-digit win against the top 25 team. Perfect at home until tonight. Well-balanced performance from everyone. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just gonna roll through a lot of these, and I'll respond to some of them, and some will just read them. We'll let you say your piece. Kevin Gagliardi says, what a great game. Hinson was ice. Yeah, Blake Hinson final line, 27 points, 11 of 19 shooting, 5 of 13 from 3, which means he was a perfect 6 of 6 from inside the arc, right? Yeah, 6 of 6 from inside the arc, and didn't attempt a free throw, which is weird. He also had 2 assists, which they talked about a lot on the broadcast, that he doesn't have a lot of assists, but he had 2 in this game. WRW Pitt says, big win. Now this team has the confidence to beat anybody anywhere after winning at Virginia and at Duke. Yeah, just don't let it be overconfidence. Don't overlook for Louisville just because you won at Virginia. Ed Mahoney says, great team win on the road in a very difficult place to play. I did not expect a win tonight. Coach has them playing hard as a team. Well done, and continue this run. Anthony Tennyson says, I did. He says he had Pitt winning tonight. So a few of you guys had Pitt winning tonight. I definitely didn't have Pitt winning tonight, but shout out to them for pulling it off. Mike Shaner says, I thought they could, but was not confident. ZC717 says, I'll admit I thought it would be close, but I didn't think they would win. Words can't describe the magnitude of it. Well, we've tried. We've spent the last, I don't know. How long have we been on the air here? Half an hour? Something like that. We spent the last half hour or so trying to put words into it. We did our best. Alan McMurray says he even put $5 on the money line on DraftKings for the Pitt W. Shout out to you, Alan. I wonder what if you're still that comment was made a long time ago. I hope you if you're still tuned in, tell me how What kind of odds did you get on that? How much did you make for your $5 bet? Wolf HD says, I think we can say Jeff Capel has brought Pitt back to relevance. They aren't 2004 back, but Pitt is back on the national stage. Listen, you know what, man? We've talked about a lot of things tonight. All right, we've talked about Blake Hinson. We've talked about Jalen Lowe. We've talked about Bub Carrington. I've talked about Guillermo Diaz-Graham and Ishmael Leggett and Federico. We've talked about what Zach Austin did and how little Will Jeffers did. We talked about the rebounding battle. We talked about the defense. We talked about how big it was to win at Virginia. We talked about all these different elements of this game and this team and this win. But that guy right there, I think you have to give a little bit of a shout out to Jeff Capel. You know, I think the Capel just rolls the ball out and lets the players just do whatever they want. I mean, you got to back off it a little bit. This was a well-coached team. This was a well-coached win. Jim Hammett pointed it out in our Panther-Lair group text that, you know, it felt like out of every timeout, Pitt got a basket, which I think is entirely a credit to Capel. I mean, out-coaching Tony Bennett. I think there was quite a bit here where Capel out-coached Tony Bennett. And I think if you look at this season and at how this season has gone and how this team has progressed, I mean, it's a credit to Capel for not just holding the team together like, oh, they could have folded when they lost to Missouri or something like that. Not like that. But to get this team to understand that the season is, you know, it's a marathon and not a sprint. But more than that, it is a process, and it is growth, and you progress, and you move, and you learn, and you develop, and you build, you know, one thing after another. The whole brick by brick thing, he's gotten them to buy in. Just keep working. Just keep learning. Every game, every possession, everything you do, learn from it and build on it. And they have. You know, and so, I mean, that thing I keep coming back to, the thing that Capel keeps talking about, learning what's required to win. Look at this team tonight and look at them in the Syracuse games. You know what I mean? Or the first Clemson game, or the Missouri game, the Florida game. You know, look at them. I mean, the first Duke game to some extent, but the North Carolina game actually would be a good example. They didn't get it. Even the Miami game, they didn't get it. You know, I don't think they had a full understanding of what it takes to win. What's really required to win when you don't have just a huge talent advantage like you do in some of the non-conference games that they played. But he's stuck to it, and he's kept hammering those points, and he's kept preaching them, and it's sinking through. It's sinking in. It's getting through to the players. And I think the development of those freshman guards has been huge. I think getting Ishmael Leggett, you know, finding sort of the sweet spot for him has been huge. And this is 2 years in a row now where I mean, Capel has largely assembled a brand new roster for the most part, you know, with just few holdovers from last year, just like last year had few holdovers from the previous season. And it's taken a little time. In both seasons, it has taken a little time. But he's gotten it, and he's been able to manage it and grow it and massage it where it needed to massage, push it where it needed to be pushed, and, you know, tweak it where it needed to be tweaked, and really build this thing up where it started at one place at the beginning of the season. And sometimes it wasn't very good. I mean, this year was a little unique. I mean, we kept talking about how we weren't going to overreact to some of those early season games. But, I mean, they had the Florida game. They had the Missouri game. They had the Clemson game. And you're like, boy, it seems like anytime they play somebody with a pulse, they're just, you know, falling apart. But he kept working it. He kept growing. And this team kept growing. And Capel kept developing it. And now you see they're at the point they're at now, where I think a lot of people who watch that game, certainly Pitt fans, but even outside of the Pitt world, I think national people who would have watched that game would say, this team might have something here. Like, this team might be able to actually keep winning, earn its way into the NCAA tournament, and maybe be a scary team to face for a couple rounds. Because I think that's what you saw tonight. And it wasn't just a one-off, because they've now won 6 out of their last 7, including a win at Duke. 2 of the toughest places to play in this conference, and Pitt has gone on the road and done it. And done it not like by accident. They didn't back into it or fall into it. A little, they backed into it a little bit at NC State, but you're going to need some of those games as you try and win 20, 25 games in a season. You're going to need some of those where you sort of back into it, where the other team misses free throws and you get the dub, and that's all that matters. But it wasn't exactly because you outplayed the other team, for the whole 40 minutes or something like that. But look, the Duke win and this win tonight were convincing victories. And I don't think you can take anything away from that. Chris says, Chris, how do you evaluate Pitt's recruiting so far? I don't know. I'm not really thinking about recruiting right now, Chris. You mean like their basketball recruiting? I mean, I think Brandon Cummings is really good. Look, it's year to year, you're going to build through the portal. And I mean, like, you're obviously going to have freshmen that you rely on, like Bub Carrington and Jalen Lowe, but you're going to build through the portal, and you're going to build your team through the portal, and you're going to get 2 or 3 portal guys, maybe more, every year who are going to be key contributors and important pieces of your team. And so that's as much as anything. When you talk about roster management, roster building, recruiting, it's I mean, the transfer portal is where a lot of that work has to be done and will be done and is getting done and will get done when they get to the postseason and players are going into the portal and becoming available. Let's see. All right, well, we're going to wrap up pretty soon here, but just going through more comments here. So we scroll through. CC717 says road wins now over Duke, NC State, and Virginia. They're playing themselves back into NCAA tournament consideration. They have to keep the mojo going. Bodie3443 says North Carolina is going to lose again tonight to Syracuse. Maybe that Syracuse loss isn't that bad. Well, it's bad because it's a game that you lost because you missed a bunch of free throws. That's what's the worst thing about that loss at Syracuse, I say. Josh Newark says Blake was good, and then you look at the stat sheet and see 27 points and then reevaluate and think ACC player of the year. I wonder if he dug himself too big of a hole, but he's been on fire lately. I mean, he really has. I mean, this 6 games out of the last 7 that they've won, he had 24 at Duke. He scored 21 at Miami. He had 17 in the Wake Forest and 17 in the Notre Dame games. He scored 16 at NC State. He has 27 tonight. He's on fire. I don't know if there's any question about it. He is rolling right now. Is he an ACC player of the year contention? Maybe. I don't know, but he's pretty hot right now. Scott Lynch says they all played well, but the development of Lowe has been the difference over the last 10 games. I mean, I would even backdate it, Scott, to the start of ACC play. I mean, you go back to the Syracuse game, Lowe has been playing really well. Let me bring up, I have the stat sheet here. So you go back to that Syracuse game, he had 9 in that game, 10 against Carolina, 9 against Louisville, 9 in the loss to Duke. He had 20 in the home loss to Syracuse, 17 at Duke, 12 at Georgia Tech, 17 at Miami. He only scored 6 against Wake Forest, but bounced back with 11 against Notre Dame. He had 20 at NC State, and then what did I say? He had 12 tonight. He's playing great, and I agree with you. That's been a big part of Pitt's improvement. Is that other guy stepping up? I mean, I think you were getting good production out of Blake Hinson, Bub Carrington, Ishmael Leggett, as he was getting healthy, he was contributing. You needed a fourth scorer, and Jalen Lowe has stepped into that role. And I don't mean fourth scorer in 1, 2, 3, 4. He's the fourth guy on the totem pole, just a fourth scoring threat. So you have 4 guys on the court who are a threat to score, and these 4 guys are a threat to score basically at any level. I mean, you pick your poison with Hinson, Leggett, Carrington, and Lowe. 3-point, pull-up jumper, drive to the hoop. They can do it all. And they do it all in different ways. And they're, some guys are better at some things than others. And each guy has his strengths. And, out of those 3 levels where he's most comfortable playing and where he's most deadly playing. But they can score at all 3 levels. And they're really good at it. And that makes Pitt just so dangerous. see. John Marzullo says, Chris, does it look to you like Capel has really improved his coaching ability over the last stretch? They're playing cleaner basketball than ever. I think he's doing a great job. I really do. Homer Simpson says, I've been pondering this idea. Would you rather Pitt go to the NCAA tournament and more than likely, best case scenario, be a Sweet 16 team, or would you rather Pitt go to the NIT and win it? That's not even a question. To me, NCAA tournament. Over and over and over again. Everything else is a consolation. I would rather get bounced in the first round of the NCAA tournament than go win the NIT. I would. I have no interest in that. I mean, like, if you can't make the NCAA tournament, then sure, go to the NIT. Given the choice of the two, and particularly when you're talking about best case scenario is Sweet 16, if they can make the Sweet 16, that would be incredible. Like, not like, oh, I'd be shocked if they could pull that off. I'm just saying that would be a great season for Pitt. Because maybe we would all have a certain appreciation for Sweet 16 seasons. We didn't appreciate it back in the day. People complain that Jamie Dixon always got bounced in the Sweet 16. He can never get past the Sweet 16. Well, now you realize that getting to the Sweet 16 consistently is a pretty good thing, actually. So I think that would be a fantastic finish to the season if Pitt got to the Sweet 16. I think that would be a great season for Pitt. And absolutely, I would take the NCAA tournament over the NIT. No matter the outcome of either one. 100 times out of 100. For sure. All right. Yeah, Peninsula P says, bruh, nobody wants the NIT. I don't even know who won last year's NIT. Yeah, I agree with that. All right. I think we're good here. I usually shoot for about 45 minutes on these post-game basketball shows. Definitely appreciate everybody tuning in. This has been it's been a lot of fun. And as this game was progressing, you started getting that feeling like, well, there might be something happening here. This might be a big game. It went quick too. Not a lot of fouls. They let them play. There was some contact, but they let them play. And game ended up rolling through. So good win for Pitt, no question about it. 74-63. Panthers improved to 16-8 overall, 7-6 in the ACC. They've won 6 out of their last 7. They'll get a couple days off before they host Louisville on Saturday night. Pitt's got momentum. There's no question about it. They're doing all the things they need to do to give themselves a chance to make the NCAA tournament. Huge win in Virginia tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm pretty sure you did. Like this video and subscribe because I hope you enjoyed the post-game show as well. Probably not as much as the game itself, but I hope you enjoyed the post-game show. So like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Tomorrow morning on the Morning Pit, we're going to be talking about some football transfer stuff and some NFL Draft Combine things. But I figured we'd give you a nice long post-game show here for the basketball talk. We'll have plenty of basketball talk, though, throughout the week. So make sure you stay tuned at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com and stay tuned on the website, Panther-Lair.com. Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight. It's been a lot of fun, as it always is. Pitt wins. We'll see what happens. We will be back for a Morning Pit tomorrow morning, though. And after that, we'll be talking all things Pitt sports. That's what we always do. Can't really find a good way to end this thing. So thank you for tuning in. Have a great night. Like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you tomorrow morning in the Morning Pit. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.